Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name's Bree. I make all kinds of running related content. Now I'm venturing into other kinds of content because I'm currently injured, nursing Achilles tendonitis. Long story short, be careful coming back to running postpartum. I definitely went really hard, really fast, and I think I'm suffering for it now. I wanted to make a video for anyone who's setting their resolution in 2025 to run their first marathon. I wanted to share with you guys things that I wish I knew before I started training for a marathon and before I made that a goal of mine. But just a warning. The number one thing that I wish I had known before I started training for a marathon was that marathon training and running marathon are very different things. So doing that 26.2 miles is a huge physical feat in itself, but actually training for a marathon is a completely different thing. Like, it is such a huge time commitment. Every single week you might be running like 10 hours a week, maybe 12 hours a week, depending on where you're at with your fitness, maybe 15 hours a week. That is a lot of time every week to be dedicating to running. And so if you are not a runner currently and you're not used to that, like 4 or 5 days a week, maybe 6 days a week, getting your run in, it is a huge adjustment to go from not running at all to running 5 or 6 times a week. So the act of running a marathon is really cool. However, training for a marathon, I think, is a lot harder, to be honest with you, because you really have to figure out like the lifestyle and how running is going to fit into your life, into your daily schedule. Just long story short on that one, I think it's just a lot harder than what people think to train for a marathon, because you're really like every single week you're restarting and you're trying to hit a certain amount of miles, hit your long run, hit your easy miles, hit your speed work, and you have to fit it into your life somehow. So if you're not used to that lifestyle, it is really, really easy to feel like you're getting behind in your mileage and get really overwhelming. Other thing I wish I knew about is that burnout is very real, very normal for people to experience, and it's just a part of training. So that is where your motivation might start to disappear and you feel really run down, really exhausted, really sick of running. That is a very, very common thing to experience during marathon training. I wish someone had told me that it was normal and that it's okay, but also like that is part of the beauty of training for a marathon, is learning how to continue staying disciplined through that feeling. That is kind of the magic behind training for a race, in my opinion, is learning that consistency will always beat feeling very motivated. Like, the motivation is going to disappear. Especially, I think the most critical and like the most common time to get burnt out from running is like 6 to 8 weeks before your race. I think that maybe even like, because you might train for something specifically for a 20-week block, 16-week block, maybe even a 12-week block if you're already really fit. And so kind of at that halfway point is when you might start to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so done. Like, this is taking over my life. This is such a huge time commitment every single week, and I just want a week off. That will happen. And it is normal and it is common, and you truly need to stay disciplined. There's nothing wrong with taking weeks where they are actually like lower in mileage and you kind of chill out a little bit. That's actually really healthy to do. Every 4 weeks, maybe every 5 weeks, you take 1 week that's like a deload week. You don't do any speed work. Your long run is a little shorter. Gives your body time to really like soak in the training that you've been doing and help you recover, get to the next level. And then the following week, you're back at it and you're ready to go. That's actually really healthy to do and really normal. So I would highly recommend planning that into your training structure. But just be prepared for that motivation to really disappear because it happens. And that's where you need to like really stick to your consistency, have that scheduled in. And I've been rambling on that piece for a minute now. So let's move on to the next thing. Something I wish I knew before I started marathon training. This was before I was ever even like that into running. I didn't understand that your shoes actually have a huge impact on your experience in your joint health and overall foot health in running. Like, you should get new shoes. If you're planning on running a marathon, you should get a new pair of shoes. Make sure you go to a running specific shoe store, get the shoes fitted to you, and make sure that They have a good return policy, so in a couple weeks, if those shoes don't work for you anymore, you can get new ones. Very, very important, because the cushion on running shoes does actually start to deteriorate, and so that like foam cushion that you have against your joints, against the pavement, will start to deteriorate. So you don't want to use the shoes that you've been wearing casually for the past 3 years walking around in them. Those are going to be completely worn down, and the foam like springiness is not going to reset every 24 hours because they're just old. So I would highly recommend getting new shoes. I think that is a very, very important part of marathon training that I wish I had known, because I was definitely running around in old Nike Frees back when those were popular. I had a pair that I had been wearing to the gym. I wore casually on walks. Like I had it for about a year, and then I started marathon training, not realizing, I mean, I was like in my 20s, so you know, your body's so springy and youthful then. Not that way now. Anyways, I would definitely recommend getting a new pair of shoes. Okay, the other thing I wish I had known when I first started marathon training is that people truly do not care about your finish time. I think that as long as you are crossing the finish line in time to get a medal, which usually races have a 6 or an 8 hour, some races have a 12-hour cutoff. Actually, I'm not sure about that, maybe a 10-hour. But as long as you cross the finish line and you get your medal, most people don't really care about your finish time. If somebody is like, oh, what time did you finish? Like, their opinion doesn't matter. The act of completing a marathon is a huge accomplishment, and it should feel like a celebration. You should feel really proud of yourself regardless of your time. If you got that medal, you did it. And so I would not get too focused on your finish time or anything like that. Don't set a goal if it's your first marathon to finish in X amount of time. I would have your first marathon be finish the marathon. Honestly, I think the best goal is to get to the start line healthy. I think that is a really good goal to have for your first marathon, because that's really hard to do. So get to the start line healthy. That is your A goal. Your B goal can be finish that marathon. Your C goal can be feel really good and get a cute picture on that day, post to Instagram, get 1 million likes. Okay, that's what I would recommend. I would not recommend having a time goal for your first marathon. I would just go into it with humility, ready to do what you can do, see how your body acts, because the reality is mile 20 to mile 26, you are not sure until you have experienced it what that really feels like, and where your body's going to go. So I would really recommend just starting out with that more conservative goal, because I got aggressive in my first marathon, and afterwards I think I was so physically exhausted and dehydrated because I didn't fuel or hydrate properly, and I peed brown, which is bad. That's not good. So I didn't go to the hospital. I ended up being fine because, again, you know, early 20s, I was just like a springy little young thing. However, could be bad if I was doing that in my 30s, possibly kidney failure. Anyways, we learn, we live and learn, we move on. Next thing I wish I had known when starting to train for a marathon. So I'm the kind of person personally who, like, when I set a goal and I'm like into this thing, I go all in on it really fast. And I would highly recommend not doing that if you can. If you can hold yourself back a little bit and be more conservative with your initial approach, instead of saying, okay, I'm gonna run 30 days in a row every day in January, I'm gonna run as much as I can, and I'm just gonna get as many miles as I can, and by the end of January I'm gonna be a runner. Wrong. By the end of January you're gonna be injured, you're not gonna be able to run anymore. So I would recommend 2 to 3 days, start to build that base. I think it's a good idea to have maybe a fall marathon if you're thinking about doing this in the spring of 2025. Pick a fall marathon and just start in the spring, just start building your base. 2 runs a week, 3 runs a week, and then you kind of upgrade slowly to 4 runs a week. And then it becomes part of your routine, hopefully, and you're kind of used to running many times a week, maybe 4 or 5. Then you go into marathon training with a base built. Your joints are ready, your bones are ready, your ligaments, your tendons, everything that is supporting your ability to run and pound the pavement the way that you do when you're running is ready and adapted to be able to handle the load of marathon training. So I would highly recommend going into it more conservative with your training. Don't try to go too hard too fast, because it could end in injury. And I'm not saying that it will, I'm just saying that it could. But that's kind of how I approached it in the beginning, was like, I'm just gonna run as much as I can, and it was not smart and it didn't work out. I got burnt out, and yeah, wouldn't recommend that. I wish someone had told me to just chill and just try to take it easy for about a month and just get used to running multiple times a week. Other thing I wish I had known is that there are so many opportunities to join running groups, that is such a game changer for being able to stay consistent. When you have friends that are engaging in the same activities as you, it automatically makes it easier to show up and do that. So there's a lot of moms running groups. I think there's like Moms Run This Town, or She Runs This Town is a national organization. I'm not exactly sure, but those Facebook groups are all over the place, so you might be able to find one of those groups. There's Black Girls Run. If you're Black, like that's a great organization. There's different run clubs that prefer drinking, or maybe they meet at a brewery, and then there's other run clubs that will meet early in the morning. Lots of people and places that you can find, all on social media. This is where all the run clubs are hanging out right now. Instagram, Facebook, you can find them. I would search it out, and I would definitely challenge you to try to meet up with a couple of different groups, kind of see which one matches your vibe and your pace and everything, because it's just a game changer for training. It's so much more fun to do with friends. And if you're signed up for a local race, you'll notice a lot of people in run groups are also signed up for those local races. Like local runners tend to sign up for local races because they're usually running and racing all the time. So I would highly recommend trying to find one of those groups on social media somewhere, and they're always welcoming new, almost always, I guess I shouldn't say always, they're very welcoming to new people. So I'd highly recommend trying to find one of those groups, seeing who you connect with, and making some running friends, because it makes such a big difference with marathon training. Like the miles by yourself gets so monotonous. And don't get me wrong, like I do most of my training by myself, but when I lived somewhere where I had a lot more runners around me, it was so fun to do a long run with a friend. And when I can do it, I absolutely do. So would highly recommend trying to make some running friends. Push yourself out of your comfort zone and just push yourself to go to these groups, and I promise you, you will love it. Okay, next thing that I wish that someone had told me, and this is not a plug for any clothing brand. However, I do think that wearing clothing that was created for runners makes a very big difference when you are actually doing marathon training, because your old ratty pair of shorts that you've been wearing to the gym for 10 years work great for a 3-mile run, but when you're bringing them on a 20-mile run, the chafing, the like whatever is happening with the waistband, all that stuff, like it just is so much more uncomfortable. It will cause issues, and I would highly recommend having running specific clothing for at least for your long runs, because the long runs, you want to be able to complete them without having any physical issues. The only physical issue being like you're pushing your aerobic fitness, but you know, chafing and all that, like it's kind of part of the game, and it's something that you have to learn. Like, what do you need to wear specifically? Maybe like anti-chafing stuff, maybe, you know, spandex under your shorts, maybe anti-chafing under your sports bra, like all that stuff. You kind of have to figure out what works for you. But being physically comfortable in your clothing at mile 15 is huge, because in a real marathon at mile 15 you have 11 more to go. So if you're already chafing up a storm at mile 15, then once you get to mile 25, like you're gonna be bleeding, your skin is gonna be peeling off, like it's not gonna be good. So I would highly recommend having running specific clothing from like a running brand that you feel very comfortable in at mile 10, 11, 12, you know, mile 18, at least for your long runs. I wouldn't say that the easy runs you need to have running specific clothing. If it works, it works. But for your long runs, I would try to get one outfit that is for your long runs, that works for those, that doesn't physically bother you in any way. The other thing I wish someone had told me is that you are going to need to do mobility work and strength training at some point in your running career. The exception to this is Des Linden, the professional runner who does like no strength training, no mobility work. Never have I ever heard of someone being able to be as successful as she is in running and literally do none of that. It's so uncommon. So I would highly recommend starting this now, starting this in your routine as you become a runner. You already are doing the strength and mobility, so you don't get injured and then later look back and say, I wish I had started this a long time ago, because it will happen. And that's where I am now. Like, I wish I had started a long time ago, but it is what it is. I'm going to start now. If I could give myself advice when I started marathon training, do the strength training, do the mobility work. It doesn't have to be complicated. The best strength routine is the one that you do. That's like the most golden nugget piece of advice I can possibly give you. The best strength routine as a runner is the one that you do. Like, it's very simple. So if you can show up for yourself for 15 minutes, you know, at the end of your run, you're doing some single leg work, some core work. Like, I don't know, mobility work, maybe dorsiflexion. We all have really tight ankles and calves, maybe some hamstring flexibility, hip flexibility, all that stuff. If you can start working that into your routine, you are going to be leagues ahead of, I guess, like your future self. If you didn't, you're going to be very thankful that you did. So yeah, let me just say that, and I hope that that inspired you to at least do something, even if it's 5 minutes. The best strength routine is the one that you do. Coming at you from the editing room, my car. I totally forgot a very important piece of advice. So this isn't the last piece of advice, but I wanted to make sure I include this. I was looking through my script and I was like, I missed a really, really important piece of advice because I was kind of like skimming as I was reading it. So, ready? Very important. You already got the golden nugget, but the number of days that you run arguably is more important than your total mileage for the week. So I would highly recommend, this is being new to marathon training. I didn't understand the importance of just like running 4 or 5 days a week is actually more valuable than hitting like this big fat long run once a week and then doing no other runs. It is really good for your body to slowly adapt over time to the act of running, as opposed to one massive session once a week where you do 18 miles and then you don't run at all. So really prioritize that consistent day over day schedule as opposed to hitting your long run every week. Like if you need to skip your long run 1 week, that is okay. If you're hitting all your easy runs and you're getting a total weekly mileage of, let's say, 26 miles, your body just ran 26 miles in a week. That's good. That's much better than one day running 18 miles and 0 miles for the rest of the week. I think I just repeated myself, but you get the idea. So coming to you from the editing room, that tip had to be included. Try to focus on the number of days in the weeks that you're running, as opposed to hitting your long run mileage and that's it. You know, like if you're going to prioritize things. Okay, back to the other video. So I think I'm going to end the video on that. I feel like that was enough. I rambled a little bit, but I hope that was helpful. If you want to be a runner in 2025 and you want to run a marathon, all the things that I wish that I knew. And I just want to say, if you are starting this out and you don't feel like a runner, you don't feel like you necessarily connect to that word with your identity, being a runner is really like, it's a self-appointed title. So at some point you will feel like, oh, I'm a runner. Like, yeah, this is me now. And no one gets to give that to you or take it away from you. So regardless of how often you run, how many miles you run, how fast you go, if you feel like a runner, then you are one. So I just want to say, heading out the door, putting on your shoes and, put on your shoes and then head out the door. Do it in that order, actually. You are a runner if you're doing that stuff. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. There's no pace that gets you like into the runner club. And honestly, a lot of us are just out there by ourselves doing our thing. Like, a lot less people care about pace than you think. Social media makes it seem really cool to be fast, but social media also makes a lot of things look really cool that are not cool. So take it all with a grain of salt. I think keep your running journey as personal as you want it to be. You don't have to become a running influencer because you start training for a marathon. That's what I thought I wanted to do, and then it was like, okay, do I actually like doing this? And now obviously here I am. Like, I definitely do. But yeah, I would highly recommend just get started, sign up for something in the fall of 2025 and start running. You're going to be thankful that you did. Running a marathon is such a cool accomplishment. Like, it is so awesome. And training for a marathon, completing a training cycle and getting to the start line healthy, also an amazing accomplishment. So that's it for me. I'll see you guys on the next video. New videos every Friday. Don't forget to like and subscribe.